I started a peasant revolution, a riot, a revolt of the masses. No better to lead them than this witch. Her eyes have lightning. And here we are, the beginning of the revolution. And we already have an enemy close to us, Warg the Prankster. But before we can do anything against this guy, we have to return home. And we disband the professional military. We then start to build a farm in our capital building, and we research economic investment for the future of our people. And the next turn, we can recruit our peasants, the rightful people to inherit this land. Here the game tells us if we ever go over the peasant cap of 13, which we will, then we will earn nothing from our farms. So I decide to start investing into industry with the weaving house. I then send our hero Louis de Milieu to go harass Warg the Prankster and assault his garrison. While sitting in our capital, Warg comes over with a full army and starts dancing, and of course it doesn't take long for him to start besieging our capital, which leaves us with no choice but to fight him. With our peasant army backed up by the garrison, we go to meet Warg the Prankster in the field. Here I decided to use a tactic called March Down Thy Oppressors, which was quite effective in the Revolution of France, so let the march begin. In this battle, I realized that Warg the Prankster had some quite high technology of suicide bombers, which he then used to harass our witch over and over again. Our peasants also held quite surprisingly against some of these orcs and goblins. And of course I was not able to use our witch, because she was completely incapacitated. Because of our witch's absence in battle, our peasants were running away, quite understandably. But they quickly re-rallied, so I sent them back into battle. And in the second push of our peasants, the enemy routs. And the victory is ours. With Warg the Prankster running away, his army wasn't fully defeated. So as an answer, we sent Louis de Milieu to go harass him once again, before we eventually attacked him ourselves. And with his weak army, it was a very easy auto-resolve. After this, we set up an encampment outside of Brion, where we waited to reinforce our men before we attacked. But of course, Krogobogrov runs out to stop us. And here we have battle number 2. With an overwhelming amount of tactics to possibly choose from in our army, I decided to go with the Peasant Square. And with my luck, we of course chose the wrong bridge. Oh yeah, they're over there. Yeah, of course I knew that. So I tried to scramble the Peasant Square in time to meet the enemy. Oh, that's a tree. The enemy was quickly spreading out around our square, which is exactly what we wanted. So our witch went hard at work to annihilate the left flank. So our right flank was looking like a Scooby-Doo episode. We also started a bully circle around the enemy leader, hoping to bully him to death. Nice. With the bully circle on the left and our witch on the right, the enemies quickly surrendered and we won. But Krogobogrov was still not defeated, so here comes battle number 2, and this time I chose the right bridge. Go, brothers. This time Kroger brought his own high-tech inventions, a chariot of death straight out of a Mad Max movie. The line was holding well until these goblins on wheels started mowing down our peasants. Our right flank wasn't looking too good. Even in all this chaos, our peasants actually managed to rout some of the enemies. So far, it was looking pretty good, but with our peasants, it could easily turn both ways. But when I saw that bully circles started to form, I knew that victory was close at hand. And after hitting Krugga and his boys one too many times in the head, they surrendered. After this battle, Krugga actually attacked once more, but this time it was an easy auto-resolve. So I moved our small army on outside the city, and the next turn, we attacked and occupied Brion. And now after occupying Brion, we had some peace, and I quickly noticed that we had vast amounts of money, and quite high income as well, especially to be early game. And I also decided that I would try to get some trade agreements going, so I went to our east, and I tried to get a trade agreement going with Orion of the Wood Elves, but he said that in return he wanted to claim half our fortune of 17,000, so of course I said no and I moved on. I then went to his neighbor, Death, and he asked for the same in return of 12,000. 12k, nah, you guys are tripping. Next turn with our fortune, I made another army and bolstered our forces, as this is only the start of the revolution. I then also decided to invest into a cellar in our capital city to boost our production. Now it didn't take long for the Broken Axe to attack us, and these guys are quite scary. And that's number 4 in the whole world. I think we'll be totally fine. Next turn, we got some charity going, and we seek out a trade agreement with our neighbors Baston, who are also at war with the Broken Axe. We also then get a declaration of war from an old man living in the mountains to our north. One war was already enough, but hey, here we are. In an effort to make some ground, I decided to send both our armies up to Massif or Call to see if we could conquer it. Now the garrison was pretty small and weak, so it was a very easy auto-resolve on our part. And now Massif or Call belongs to us. I then checked on our neighbor and ally, Baston, and quickly found out that they are gone and completely evaporated from the map, which means that I am now alone, which is really bad. So I went to our only hope, the greedy Wood Elves to our east, and then decided to shove the whole settlement of Massif or Call up Orion's ass, and in return we would get a military alliance and a trade agreement. And we also dragged them into the war with the Broken Axe, and of course they accepted. I then did something I have no clue what does, and I built an outpost in one of his cities. I then sent Louis de Milliard to go and harass Grom the Punch. I then sent our second army up north as a buffer, while I made a third army in our capital. In the very next turn, our ally got attacked by Blooded Axe Tribe, and to keep the military alliance, we had to join the war. And hey, who would have known that these attackers were right next to our second army, and we got attacked. I tried to do a retreat, and this resulted in an ambush. I don't really know how that happened. Now in an ambush, your army is stretched in a line as they're marching and you get attacked from both sides. Now, our army consisting of only peasants, this was really bad, as they were quickly isolated and they were routing from the field immediately. Now it didn't take long before over half our army was running away from these hairy abominations. Well, this isn't going too well. Now this turned into an absolute slaughter, and our army was removed from the map like it never existed. We then made another trade agreement with Luen of Coron in the north. Now Orion was protecting Quenelle from the Beastmen until Grom the Punch showed up with both his armies. Orion then retreated towards us, and we decided to show up and reinforce him. This resulted in both me and him actually being attacked by Grom the Punch, and a battle ensued. This was heavily in our favor because of Orion's elite units. And also whatever these things are. It didn't take long before the peasant horde reinforced into the battle. Now I had a plan. Since most of Orion's units were elite archers, I decided to use my peasants as kind of a meat shield, allowing Orion's archers enough time to mow down the enemy. Now the enemy actually quickly responded by pushing into our line. Now it's up to Orion to use the time that I'm buying him to actually do damage to the enemy. Now our peasants were actually holding surprisingly well and way longer than I thought they would. But after a whole 7 minutes into the fight, I realized that I was almost the only one on the battlefield, and somehow all of Orion's units were gone. I have no clue how the hell this happened and how he just left me alone. And now it was up to my peasants and the witch to save the day. And as a surprise to no one, we lost. And inspecting the post-battle screen, I have no clue how this happened and how all his archers got almost 0 kills and were completely killed off. Even our peasants survived. And with Orion's army completely gone, I tried to use both my armies to attack Grom the Punch. I had to defeat him in detail, and I couldn't let both his armies just march down our city. This was kinda our only hope so far. So I set up our famous peasant square, and our reinforcements would later come from the east, and I was planning to flank them with this huge army. Now all I had to do was harass the enemy and hold on for long enough. I quickly realized that this wouldn't work, so I sent the hero to flank and the rest of the peasants to meet our peasant square, and I did a tactical retreat. Our peasant square was caught, so I sent the witch to go and harass their ranged units, while our peasants did the best they could to regroup. Realizing our first peasant square was lost and dragged into hell, I decided to set up the biggest peasant square I've set up so far. While our first square rounds the field, the enemy leader Grom the Punch quickly runs into our second square. It doesn't take long until the bully circle starts forming around him. Although I don't really know who the victim here is, if it's him or our peasants. The other enemy units were also coming in to reinforce their leader. Our peasant square had been split in two, which is not what we want at all. And so our peasants did what they could and fought to the last man. Grom the Punch's army was too much to bear, and it didn't take long until our peasants started to rout the field. This might have been a loss, but the war is not over. We sent one of our armies into Brion as a garrison, but our second army quickly got attacked, and I realized that this would not be a win, so I did an auto-resolve. At least we killed some of their units. I then started reinforcing the army in Brion, and I made a second army in our capital and started reinforcing that one as well. It didn't take long until Argor attacked the garrison in Brion, and another battle started. So I punched the peasant square towards our enemy with our hero in the front. We really need this win. Because this is the revolution of a simple man, the meaning and value of every peasant, the backbone of the world, and so the rightful heirs. The revolution has just begun. Our hero was in the front doing quite a lot of damage until our peasant horde showed up and met the enemy line. Our main line was actually holding pretty well, but I was unsure of our peasant boys in the field if they were chasing the enemy or being chased. I didn't realize this until it was too late, but our hero had actually started to chase some of the enemies into the forest, which meant that our peasant in the main line were starting to rout without any leadership. This wasn't looking too good. Didn't also take long until our hero actually died, which resulted in a decisive defeat. Brion was then attacked by both of the enemy armies, and I realized it was a loss, so I auto-resolved. I then spoke to Orion of the faction Taliesin, and asked him if he could actually attack Grom the Punch with me, and it seemed like that he would do so. Orion then nobly showed up a turn later with a full army, and then quickly got defeated by Grom the Punch. Well, Orion wasn't much of help, so yet again, we were alone. But the peasants don't give up that easily. I started recruiting a bunch of lords and reinforcing all of the armies that I could, making the best defense that I was able to. Grom attacked and we easily won with the help of older armies and lords. This was the first and well-needed victory. It was looking good. So at the time that this bought, I kept reinforcing. Remember that delirious old man in the mountains in the north? Well, yeah, he has showed up. And he's moving quite quickly towards our city. Now what the fuck? And so a battle ensued where most of our army couldn't actually reinforce, which was a pretty obvious defeat. I then decided to send our main army to go and attack the Barrow Legion's second army, and with a close victory I decided to auto-resolve, but the enemy's army was not fully defeated, and so he walked away. Knowing that I couldn't chase him for that far, I decided to return to the capital again to reinforce. Our capital was then attacked by Argor and Hackbeard Burner, but thankfully this was a victory. And we only lost 2 units in the auto-resolve, so I took that. And then realized that I had to defeat 3 armies of the Barrow Legion, and Grom the Punch was already back with a full army. It didn't take long until the old man himself besieged our capital. And this would be quite the battle, the biggest one yet. Bring him up here. I decided to send Maxime up to our reinforcements so I could make a proper defense. With the enemy army quickly charging us, I sent Maxime down to make space for our army. And it seemed to be working, as the other armies weren't engaging and were rather repositioning. Here they are. Wait, I can't control them. No, oh my god, no. No, I can't control them. I then realized the worst thing ever. These armies were set to allied control, and I don't know why. It was now up to our friendly AI to make this battle work. At least I control over Maxime, and I made him do as much damage as possible. And here comes the brave charge of our peasants to meet the enemy line. I also sent Maxime to start a pull noodle fight against one of the enemy heroes, and one of our other heroes also joined. And the AI wasn't actually doing too bad, and using proper tactics, surrounding enemies with peasants, and using cavalry to charge into vulnerable flanks. Now our boys to the west weren't doing too well, being harassed and eaten alive by whatever bad things those things are. Now during all of this chaos, which was looking pretty well in our favor, Maxime had actually killed the enemy hero, who sent him in on another rampage. And then it dawned on me, we were only fighting a fraction of the enemy armies. And now we had to fight the actual army of the Barrow Legion. It wasn't looking too well. But our soldiers weren't done fighting yet, and they bravely charged into the Legion of the Dead. A second pull noodle fight also happened, where Maxime was fighting a undead doppelganger. Our army were desperately fighting, clawing into every inch and centimeter of land, but it sadly was not enough. The undead horde were never ending, surrounding and slowly grinding down every living being. Some places we had to tactically withdraw, and other places just completely routed. Some places were doing better than others. Like Maxime, his pool noodle fight was still going, and it kinda looked like he was winning. And other places were doing worse, like his peasants being thrown around by enemy cavalry. It didn't take long until Maxime was the only one left on the battlefield, still fighting. This resulted in, of course, a decisive defeat and a bitter auto-result. I guess the peasant revolution wasn't worth fighting for, and the old senile elite still holds the power.